I was left for dead. That's how my journey in entrepreneurship started. I left the corporate world and my finance and MBA degrees behind me to share my story. Welcome to That Entrepreneur Show, where resilience meets hustle. Let's build and learn from our guest now.
Obviously, in some industries, you can't really bootstrap. If you're going to build, the next Tesla or SpaceX, you're probably not going to bootstrap it, right? But for many businesses, it's possible. And if it is possible, I would do it without borrowing money. You're just building a real business, making it profitable, and kind of cash flowing through it.
Good morning to everyone where I am, or if we're where Nimo is. Good morning all the way from Hong Kong. Nimo, thanks for joining me all the way across the world.
Thanks for having me. Good evening.
We are going to have a fun episode today here on That Entrepreneur Show. I want to thank everyone for continuing to tune in and make this a top 2.5% global show. We can't do it without our guests, our listeners, so thank you so much. And today we are diving into so much to help you on your entrepreneurial journey. There's no blueprint in this path that we chose to be on. And today we're going to learn from a visionary entrepreneur who works in global markets. He's stationed, as you know, in Hong Kong, other international waters, and as well California here in the States. But what brings him here today, he co-founded, Grabo to revolutionize the construction and manufacturing industry with cutting-edge professional tools. Let's start at the beginning here. Were you in construction growing up working, or what led you to want to create this business?
Well, yeah, I did have like a little bit of experience working just like during high school and when I was younger, just like doing work around the neighborhood and taking like jobs during the summer and stuff like that. But that's not the main thing that led me there. I kind of was more interested in the mechanical engineering. I've studied mechanical engineering in Israel and kind of went down that route of hardware entrepreneurship and tried a couple of things early on that didn't work, might even be more interesting than what eventually did work. And eventually I found myself in the hardware space making power tools.
Let's talk about one of those lessons learned you got from one of those areas that didn't work right there. You said it would have been cool if they did, but they didn't. What did you learn from one of those?
Yeah, so right after college, I opened my first startup, which was basically an idea for custom-made insoles. This was back in 2012, and we had some basic apps back then, but all of like the 3D modeling and 3D printing was just getting started. And I opened this startup where the idea was, you take your phone, download an app, and make like a video of your foot and get like a custom-made insole, and maybe later on even like a custom-made shoes. And that was like my first brush with entrepreneurship right out of my undergrad. And I made every single mistake that I could possibly make. I was able to raise some money from some angel investors and from a VC fund. But basically, it all came down to, back then, I just didn't know how to sell the product well. The technology worked, and I was able to hire some great folks, but this lasted for about 2.5 years before we ran out of cash and figured out, well, we need to close shop and move on to the next thing and try again.
And you tried a few more times, and now that's what brought you here at Grabo. Let's talk about what it is first. Who is your target customer? Who can you serve the best?
Yes, Grabo is a power tool in the construction industry, more specifically in the material handling space. You can view it as it's basically a powered vacuum lifter. So today we're at Home Depot, Lowe's, Floor & Decor, and around 200 other small and medium-sized dealers and distributors, both in North America, Europe, and so on. We have our own factory in China, and we have a team in Shenzhen and a team in Huizhou. We do all of the design and engineering in-house, the manufacturing, and then we have a team in the US, in Las Vegas, that is responsible for marketing, sales, and basically growth of this business. So we're in a power tool. We recently started working with DeWalt. So when people hear power tools, that's probably what pops into their mind. So that's where we're at. We're one of the tools that you would see on the shelves in Home Depot.
So you're starting to do some work with DeWalt. Are we able to learn anything else about this yet, or is it still all behind the scenes?
Oh yeah, no. This is it's pretty new, but it's out there already. I mean, the tool is available. So basically, I'll take a step back and say, Grabo is a tool that we designed and built in-house initially with no partners. Designed it from the ground up, tested the market. We found a product market fit. This was around 2019 when we kind of started testing the market and started production. And initially, it was all just under our own brand. It was just Grabo, and we got into Lowe's. We got some partnerships in terms of distribution in different countries. And a couple of years after that, Stanley Black & Decker, the owners of DeWalt, contacted us, and they were like, "Hey, you guys have a pretty cool tool. Can we license it? Can we have, you guys have some nice IP, and we would like to have it under the DeWalt brand." And we're like, that's great, but licensing doesn't sound like the best option for the company, because we've been doing it for a couple of years. It's going well. It's this thing is growing, and I don't know if we want to just kind of hand off our baby and hand off like this invention. So we said no, but they were very nice, and they came back a few months later and they said, you guys have the manufacturing done in China. You do everything from scratch. How about you be our OEM factory? Make it under the DeWalt brand, and you guys be the factory. And we had to think about it for a while, and we're like, there are some very large companies in the OEM space. You can think like Foxconn that makes iPhones for Apple, but I don't know if I want to be Foxconn. We probably more want to be on like the Apple side of things, right? So we had to say no to that as well. Eventually, what happened is in 21, we decided to do a co-branding product. So today, what you would see on the shelves is a DeWalt product with the name Grabo on it as well. So we own the IP for the basic patent and the technology. We produce it in my factory in China, and it is sold under the DeWalt and Grabo brand. Wherever you can find DeWalt tools, you can also find the DeWalt Grabo.
Well, congratulations on reaching this point in your career where one of the titans in the industry, the big dogs, the big players, is working with you, recognizing the hard work you put in. I know that has to feel good after early stages in entrepreneurship. Are you expanding the line under DeWalt, or what's like on the current horizon?
Yeah, so under the Grabo brand, we have several different SKUs. We have different types of lifters. The main target audience is mostly for construction workers in flooring, tiling. So you can imagine everything that has to do with lifting and handling of tiles, porcelain, and even board construction like plywood, drywall. So general construction as well. It's basically a handle that can attach itself to anything, can attach even to rough surfaces, slightly porous surfaces. So some jobs on the work site that usually need 2 people or more can now be done with a single person, just easier to handle the materials and set them in place and so on. So in terms of different types of products, we have specific types of Grabos that are meant for outdoor pavers. We have one that is made specifically for glass, for like windows and countertops. And there's a whole kind of ecosystem of accessories, different seals, different attachments that connect to the Grabo and turn it into more useful product. Just like one example is an attachment for a winch that allows them to lift larger pieces of granite using several units at the same time, and so on.
Well, that's incredible, and I hope that inspires everyone, not if you're only in the construction field, but how you can continue to grow your product, your service, what you're offering. As you're beginning to scale now, what were some challenges you faced in scaling? Maybe some things you wish you knew before you started scaling?
Oh, man, well, the first thing is, I have a lot of friends. Being in California, I have a lot of friends who are in software and have startups, and entrepreneurship in general is hard, right? There's a lot that can be done. I don't want to say that somebody else in entrepreneurship has it easy. It's always hard, but hardware is hard. When you make a mistake in software, not a big deal. Not always a big deal. You can fix it, push, a new version, ask your customers to download the latest version of your software. With hardware, everything takes longer. You have to make sure everything is done right. Everything goes through the processes of making sure that the quality is there. You got to prepare the mass production. At the beginning, being a young inventor and engineer, it kind of felt like, I invented this new product and it's really cool, And I built a prototype. It was kind of fast. It was, 3D printed some parts and I put it together and it feels like you're almost there. But from that moment where you feel like you have like a good product and it's and it works, it does what it's supposed to do, that's the 80-20 rule, right? And this last couple of steps, that's the majority of the work. Taking this prototype and then preparing it for production, getting the right partners in terms of getting the supply chains, getting the parts, putting together the mass production plan, making sure that you have everything that you need to kind of continuously crank out the parts. Once you're in those big DIY stores like Lowe's and Home Depot, you can't really tell them, sorry guys, I can't send you a container this month because we don't have enough batteries or screws or whatever it is you're missing. If you're missing one part out of your bill of material, you can't ship out products. So that was like the main thing that we had to learn early on, is that hardware takes a lot of preparation. And you really have to make sure that everything is in line before launching the product. You can't really do the lean startup method of testing the market and seeing what works and iterating. It has to be more of like the 0 to 1 type of thing where you work on something completely new and take a leap and make sure everything is in line before taking the leap.
Making sure everything is in line. So you're saying it's important to take our time and make sure we don't rush and skip over important things.
Yeah, I think this is like the difference between hardware and software, and I talk about this a lot with software entrepreneur. In software, it's all about like move fast and break things, but that's fine when you can fix those things. Right. But if you make 100,000 units of a product, and then after the fact you find out that there is a faulty PCB, and you already made everything in your factory and paid for the parts, paid for the labor, shipped it over, paid for the tariffs. These are going up pretty soon. That's gonna suck. Yeah, you pay for all this, you wait all this time, and then you find out you have to do a recall. That happened a couple of times in the beginning.
Right.
It can get expensive. It can get in hardware you got to take your time and really make sure that everything is correct and ready.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. We've spent a lot of time now on scaling, discussing scaling, which is very important, but also a lot of listeners to this show are in that early stage. What advice can you offer for some early stage entrepreneurs out there through your incredible experience?
I would say that I can speak specifically about hardware. I think this is where I personally had my success. And just to give you a little bit of background, today we have 100 people employed in both sides of the world. So we have the production and some of the engineering done in China and a great team based in Las Vegas, Nevada, and some folks in other places working from home. So my experience really is with hardware. In the early beginning, the type of mistakes that I tend to see, the type of mistakes that I did with hardware products is, for example, a lot of people kind of fixate on patents and IP, and these are good to have. If you have a budget, if you raised some money, or if you have enough in order to kind of go through and finish your prototype and production run, and you have some leftover, sure, submit some patents, make sure you have everything set up, and they are important. But I've seen so many good products just not making it to market, even though the products are great, but the entrepreneurs just ran out of cash because they basically wasted their budget early on before they were able to start production. So specifically in this field, you got to budget properly, take some safety margins. If you think you need K in order to finish your a couple of iterations and start production, you probably need K. If you think you're going to do it in 6 months, you probably need at least a year. That would be like the main thing to consider there.
Absolutely. I've had that. I'm typing up. I like to put some show note, like some discussion points other than just your bio. You highlighted something important here, the negative side to borrowing money, where you can run out and not budget properly. I'm someone who, since 2015, has bootstrapped it, only using my capital. While there are pros and cons to that approach, getting in over your head with someone else's money probably isn't a good feeling. Did you ever come close to any of these difficult conversations on borrowed money?
No, so I personally always tell entrepreneurs, do not borrow money. I mean, there's a big difference between raising capital and borrowing money on your own. When you raise capital, either from angel investors or VC, the actual contract is you're the entrepreneur, you're risking your time, the investor risks the money, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and shit happens. You don't want to be in a position where where you take a bunch of credit cards or a loan or whatever it may be. I don't think that personally that's the right way to go about it. It's way too much risk. However, while saying this, I kind of bootstrapped to an extent. So I told you about my first startup where I did raise venture capital, and
Sure.
that one failed. With Grabo, however, I have some friends and family, some very small check sizes, but we basically cash flowed the majority of the business. So we started small. We started with small production runs. I didn't go into it, but we had a couple of other products before the Grabo. We made some drills, some waterproof power tools, and kind of used that in order to have some cash in the bank. And there is a balance there. There is some trade-off. If you do it slowly and if you don't raise money, you will move more slowly. There's no way around it. However, you'll keep more of your company. Today, in my company, there is a single board member, myself. So the board meetings are very efficient. No vote required. Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, like you have to, obviously, in some industries, you can't really bootstrap. If you're going to build, the next Tesla or SpaceX, you're probably not going to bootstrap it, right? But for many businesses, it's possible. And if it is possible, I would do it without borrowing money. You're just building a real business, making it profitable, and kind of cash flowing through it.
I appreciate you sharing that perspective. And everyone, like he highlighted, there's never a right or wrong answer in entrepreneurship. It's got to be what's best for you. Don't try to force something, take funding, take credit cards unless you need to, because debt is real, as many of us listening on have learned if you're an entrepreneur. But before we let him go, before we get his contact information, if you could choose to sit down with one entrepreneur, Nimo, dead or alive, to help you on your journey, who's your choice?
Man, I would love to pick the brain of Peter Thiel. There's a list there, but I would really recommend his book, 0 to 1. There's kind of two iconic books. One would be 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. The other one would be The Lean Startup. And they both kind of talk about completely different methodologies. But yeah, he would be on top of the list of somebody I would want to have coffee with and see what he thinks about the future of my industry.
Now, because you are a multinational entrepreneur in multiple countries, where would this coffee meeting go down?
Oh man, well, I've been a tech nomad for a while, but I do spend a lot of time in the US, and he's in LA, right? If he's not,
He's
if
in
he didn't
California
escape,
as well. Well,
yeah,
he might have.
he's not one of those entrepreneurs who escaped to Texas yet. Maybe that will
Possibly.
happen at some
I
point.
mean, Texas, Florida, these areas that offer different benefits than states that are becoming a bit strict. But that's not what this podcast is. We're not the experts on the real estate area. But today, I want to thank you so much, Nimo, for taking the time to join our community of entrepreneurs. You brought your value. We talked about the before, the middle, and the end. That's how I like to run these shows. Now, where can we find you online, your company online?
Grabo.com, and you can find our products in Home Depots, Lowe's, Floor & Decor. If you're curious about the products, Grabo.com or NimoPowerTools.com is where you can find everything.
Thank you for sharing that. Everyone, be sure to show him some love online. And this is That Entrepreneur Show. Please remember to subscribe and leave a review for the next episode. My name is Vincent A. Lancey. You can learn more about me at vincentalancey.com. And today's sponsors are brought to you by the Empathy Set, John Ford's new Empathy card set, along with his Empathy app in the App Store today, and along with Coming Alive podcastproduction.com to get your podcast journey started today. But with that, we are signing off. Literally across the globe. Thank you so much, Nimo, for your time.
Thanks for having me, man.